I want to welcome you back to Online Course and Info Product Marketing Domination. Today we have another interview guest, Bailey Richert. To give a little background, Bailey is a business coach. She has a 2 Comma Club award member, and she's also a renowned speaker. She's spoken at Funnel Hacking Live. She has a Tedx talk talking about her quarter life crisis, and she's been featured on Inc., Entrepreneur, and Forbes. Bailey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. We can get right into it with our first question. So what kind of got you into the online space, business space?
Well, like many people growing up, I think my parents encouraged me, to go the traditional route of education, especially in America. We call that the American dream, right? And so I, after high school, went to university to study engineering. And I followed that path for many years. I was an environmental engineering consultant out in California until about the age of 25, when I had a quarter life crisis where I basically just started to question the path that I was on and whether or not this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And after evaluating all of the different options available and thinking about the things that I wanted in my own life, more freedom and such, I decided that becoming a business owner was really what I needed to do. And that's when I started researching and learning and becoming an online business owner.
Awesome. So how long ago was that? Just curious,
Yes. So I left my 9 to 5, I think in 2014.
Okay, cool. So, give or take 6 years, 5 or 6 years. So what were some of the trials you had to overcome in the journey? I know you mentioned quarter life crisis. Do you have any specific trials you had to overcome?
At the time of my quarter life crisis, things were a little bit rough because when I say that I had a crisis, and I really do talk about this more in my TEDx talk, it was actually a pretty intense thing. I had a lot of, physical and visceral reactions to what I was feeling mentally. My mental state and emotional state was affecting my physical state as well. I had a lot of panic attacks and things like that. So it was really, my mind and my heart telling my body that, we needed to make a really big change if I wanted to be able to overcome this. I'm very fortunate because I have incredibly supportive parents as well as incredibly supportive friends and other family members. And so other people maybe would have, said that that was a challenge to go against their family's wishes or something. For me, that wasn't the case because my family saw what was happening to me and they knew that I was unhappy and that, I needed to make a change, and they trusted me to make those changes while also, making smart life choices and decisions, right? And taking care of myself along the way. So the biggest thing was just kind of deciding what it is that I wanted to do next. I wrote about this in one of my books that I had this fear that, I didn't want to make the decision about what I was going to do next, leave my 9 to 5. And I didn't want to do it quickly because I just didn't want to end up kind of pivoting, but not making a real change. I didn't want to just leave for another company down the road, right? Or I didn't want to leave the field of engineering, but enter a 9 to 5 in some other industry and still be just as miserable or still, not have really found my way. So I spent a lot of time really thinking about what it was that I wanted to do. And it took a while to make those decisions. So, that was difficult in the beginning too.
Awesome. Yeah. That sounds very difficult, but that's awesome. You had some supportive parents. I mean, that and, supporting friends and family, that really helps. Mm-hmm. So at what point did you feel like you have found success with business, or maybe have you not felt that way yet?
Well, no, I definitely feel like I have found success. There are certain, things in life that indicate that you are successful, such as awards. You mentioned the 2 Comma Club award, from ClickFunnels. That's one thing. The opportunity to even work with Russell Brunson and to be given that opportunity to speak on the Funnel Hacking Live stage. That was, a pretty big milestone in my career, I think. But I think that my feeling of success came long before that even. And, I suppose, there's certain monetary markers, the first time you hit 6 figures on your own and the first time you hit 7 figures or something like that, those are definitely big things, but there's other things as well. The first time you have, your first 6-figure launch or something, or, you wrote a book for your audience and you didn't know how well it was going to go over and then they absolutely loved it. Or, there's so many other factors, some monetary and some not, that kind of indicate success. In my own life, I just, like anybody, was nervous about the idea of being self-employed, about being responsible for your own income, not having that, biweekly paycheck that's coming in all the time. And I've been self-employed now, for many years. So I think every single time, I do, I submit those taxes, that's also a feeling of accomplishment, because it's like, hey, I'm still doing this. I've still made it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is good. I love it. All right. So how about we get more into like today? So what do you do? Who do you serve, and what do you do today on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So I'm a business coach for infopreneurs, which means that I work with individuals who want to take their life experience, knowledge, and passion and create money from that, somehow monetize that, turn it into a business. And specifically through the process of creating and selling info products like ebooks and online courses and virtual summits and other things like that.
That is awesome. So I know most of our audience. I didn't tell you this before. I was going to ask you this, but I just thought about it, so I'm going to ask you. Most of our audience are, people who want to get into the info space. So you being an info product seller, what's your favorite part about being, your own online entrepreneur, infopreneur, whatever you want to call it?
My favorite part about being an online entrepreneur is difficult to pinpoint because, in my opinion,
Sure.
there are many benefits. I think one of my personal favorite things is, of course, the lifestyle freedom. I think a lot of people would say that, but I, in particular, at this current moment that we're recording this, I am not married. I don't have children. I have a lot of freedom else in my life. And one of the things I really like to do is travel internationally. When I was at university, I did 2 study abroad semesters. I've gone to Kenya with Engineers Without Borders. I've traveled quite a bit on vacation and for other reasons. And it's just one of the things that I enjoy doing. And certainly, as you know, when you have a 9 to 5, you're restricted a lot more because you just don't have as many vacation days, or, it's just very expensive and you have to budget and things like that. And so ever since, becoming, my own boss, I've had an opportunity to do a lot of travel. And it's fun because my business is entirely run online, meaning that I can even take my business with me. So I have done a month in Colombia. That was last fall. I just got back from 6 weeks in New Zealand. Before those trips, I was in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So that for me is one of the biggest benefits.
That's awesome. You got a favorite place you've been to?
Well, I do have a favorite place that I've been to in the world, though this is from a long time ago. It wasn't from when I was an entrepreneur. I absolutely loved my visit to Cambodia. It was incredible. I had a really great time there. That was back in 2010. So that was before I was my own boss. Since I have been my own boss, I got to do a second trip back to London, England. I studied abroad there when I was at university, and I hadn't been back in a really long time. And so I took a trip back there to see how things have changed. And it's one of my most favorite cities in the whole world. So that's always going to be very special to me.
That is awesome. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing. So how about some marketing tips for other info product sellers?
So marketing tips. Yeah. So one of the things that I would actually like to talk about for a few minutes is one of the strategies that I put in place in my business a couple of years in, which I wish I really would have done sooner, which is a virtual summit. So one of the biggest things that I would love to share with your listeners is that for anybody who's becoming a new info product creator, so many coaches out there focus on teaching the revenue stream side of things. So they're going to say to you, oh, write a book, or, oh, go create a course. But the reality is, if you do that before you have an email list, before you have followers or an audience, you are not going to be successful, because you're not going to have anybody to sell that product to. You're going to put it out into the world and hear crickets, right? And that's not what we want. And so if you're just getting started, rather than creating that product first, we tend to focus on, when I work with my clients, we tend to focus on where can we build up this audience. And one of the frustrating things about putting out content online, though it's incredibly important and valuable to do so, is that it can be very slow to get subscribers. Just putting out that weekly blog post or that weekly YouTube video, unless something kind of goes viral or it just hits, it can be, a slow process. So you need to think about ways that you can grow that email list faster. Of course, if you have a budget, doing something like Facebook ads is obviously an option. However, for those people that are on more of a budget, or don't have as big of a budget to work with, we need to look at some other ways. And one of the ways that I encourage people to consider is leveraging other people's platforms. So if there is somebody else who already has a business and an email list of your ideal customer, how can you access that list? Now, you can't just ask that person, hey, can I have the people on your email list? They will not give it to you, but even if they wanted to, that is illegal. You can't be swapping lists. That's not how it works. People have to actually sign up for your own list. So what we want to do instead is have those partners, those affiliate partners, those joint venture partners, whatever you want to call them, we want to have them promote things that we have, our own funnels, our own webinars, things like that. And one of the best ways to do that is by incorporating that individual in the content creation process, so believe it or not, you're doing something like this here with the interview, right? So I have a platform of followers. You have invited me to become a part of this interview on your podcast. And I'm sure that one of the things you're hoping is that I will share this podcast interview with my audience when we're done recording, so that some of my listeners and some of my audience members will become your listeners, right? So that's kind of what you're hoping. Well, what we can do in a somewhat larger sense is do a virtual summit, which is kind of like an online event, sort of like an online conference, where you bring a bunch of speakers together and you have them give these interviews or presentations about their topics, and you create a funnel whereby in order to see these interviews, someone needs to opt in with their email address. And then the idea is, hopefully, fingers crossed, all of the speakers will go out and promote this incredible event to their audiences. And when those folks come through your virtual summit registration funnel, they become your own email subscribers and audience members. Now, it doesn't always work that every single person on the summit promotes, but that's okay, because even if, half of them did or something like that, you can still grow your list very quickly. I did my first virtual summit in 2016, and I have been doing it every single year since. In fact, it's about to go live next week for the very fifth annual time, which is just crazy to me when I think about, how long I've been doing this. But it's been huge in moving the needle of my email subscribers and business in general. Because one of the things we don't really have time to get into today is, aside from email subscribers, there are many ways that a virtual summit can benefit your business, because you can actually sell products through that virtual summit funnel. You can create relationships with influencers and your other guest speakers, so you can expand your network. And there's many other benefits too.
Awesome. Thank you. That was actually some nice knowledge bombs. I know, just as a plug for Bailey, if you go to the ClickFunnels group, she has awesome value posts there. Read them all. I read them all. So yeah, go ahead and check those out too. Anyways, last question. So what are your plans for the future, and where can people find you?
Sure. So as I mentioned, plans for the future. So next week, my Infopreneur Summit is going live for the 5th annual time. So you can go to infopreneursummit.com to check that out. I always have new courses and books and products that are coming out, teaching people about different things related to the infopreneurship space. So definitely the best place to find me and check out all the stuff I already have, and make sure you get on my email list so you can get updates about future launches and things, is at BaileyRichert.com.
Awesome. I hope all the links are going to be down there. Check her out. Bailey, I want to thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for taking your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. You have a good one. Take care. Bye.